Hey, it's Donnie from Coding Overload, and today is part 2 of our Tynker series. And today we will be talking about control. That's this second tab right here. We're going to be going over conditionals, so our if-elses. We're also going to be going over loops, specifically the forever loop. And also, if you have not watched the first episode, I recommend doing that. There's going to be a few things I kind of assume you know that I won't explain during this episode. But if you're familiar with Scratch, you're probably okay to skip the first episode. So this one, we are going to be creating a short program that will basically allow us to use our arrow keys to control our actor here. We're going to be able to go up, left, down, and right, and he will move in those directions. We are not going to focus on too much of like the animation or making it look natural. We're going to mostly just focus on how do you read user input through the keys, and how do you not just read it, but how do you use it? How do you make it more interactive? So the very first thing we need is our Onstart here. We're going to get rid of these two. Now, the Onstart means that when this button is pressed, any code right here is going to run. But the thing is that code will only run one time. So if we go to something like motion and we go move 10 pixels, he's not going to move 10 pixels more than once. See, he's only going to do it one time. So that means a very common mistake people make is to just do something like, oh, if, and then you'll go maybe, say if this is true, then move 10 pixels. Well, yeah, I mean that code is reasonable. So we go to something like key right press, because that would be right? And let's say we want to just move 10 pixels then. Nothing too crazy there. We're going to do that. And now I'm clicking the right arrow and I'm not moving. Now there are times where actually you can make it move, but you would have to have very good timing. Because what's happening is the moment I press that for like one loop of Tynker's like inner loop where it actually reads the keyboard input, where it actually executes your program, that if statement is only going to check if the key right arrow is pressed one time. And you got to remember that something like Tynker is going to run maybe 30, 40 times a second. So you have about maybe a 30th of a second to hit the right arrow, which is just not very reasonable. But there are ways around that. Now, if we do something like this forever loop here, now notice that you're going to have to do it like that. You're going to have to kind of put it inside. Sometimes in Scratch, you can just drag things like this and it will automatically put it inside. Tynker does not do that, so we'll just do it like that. And now let's check this out. Now, that's interesting. It says if key right arrow is pressed and move 10 pixels, but look how fast our guy moved. And what's happening is we are running that loop a bunch of times, right? And it's going to move 10 pixels every single time. And remember, it's running 30, 40 times a second. So if you hold that key down for a second, you might move 400 pixels. So these are the kind of things that your students might run into when they are learning about control structures and when they're learning about conditionals. So we're going to come back to that problem. The first thing we're going to do is let's go ahead and just set up our other keys. Let's get all that done real quick. So what I tend to do when doing this is I pull out all of the if statements I will need, because I don't like clicking through all the tabs. I don't want to go like control, then go down to sensing. I really just get all my ifs here, then go to sensing and get everything. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, and then that is 4. And we'll go left arrow. And that's fine. You can put these in any order. The order does not matter. I usually do left to right, up and down. That's kind of the way I like to do it, but there's no reason for that. You can do however you want. Now let's go to motion, and let's go to move negative 10 pixels. And let's see how this works out. And you can see that we can get him coming back and forth. Now we're still moving way too fast, but that's something we're going to get to. Now, the move negative 10 pixels, move 10 pixels, that is a nice way to do this, but I don't necessarily like doing that, because when we start rotating the sprite or we start animating him, that 10 pixels does not always do what you expect it to do. Like if we do this right here, if we were to have him face forwards, what we would see, like right there. Now, if I was to do this move 10 pixels, he's going to be moving in a different direction, right? He's not going to be moving to the right anymore. He's going to be moving kind of up and left. And that's just because of how a lot of stuff works in programming, is that this move 10 pixels means whatever direction your sprite is facing, make it move 10 pixels, which is kind of a weird way of thinking about it. So I tend not to use that because it's really about whatever direction your sprite is facing, and that direction is dependent on how the sprite was created. So it's not always, where the eyes are pointing. That isn't always where the movement will go. So that can be hard to figure out. So I tend to like to use the change X because it's a more precise thing. So we'll do -10 and 10. So -10, of course, is for the left arrow because that'll make it go to the right. Now, if we pause this and you look at my cursor, Y up means your character goes up. So you just can check that real quick if you ever forget. And then Y down, of course. So a -10 pixels would be an up and down. And then you'll get something like this. We still have our same problem we had before. See, you can make it move a little bit if you're really quick, but another way to do it is to just do what most games do, and that's limit how often you can input something. And that is something we can find in control, is that we can find a delay. Now what this means is that when we add this delay, it is going to say, okay, check this loop, check this loop, check this loop, check this loop, then wait 1 second, then repeat all your checks. So if you were to hold the down arrow the moment after this loop was this if statement was checked, you'd have to wait 1 whole second to actually move down. And you can see that our movement is actually really slow now because it's only moving every second. And if we click it a bunch, like really rapidly, which you should be able to hear, it's not going to move every time because it's only going to move when we happen to be holding it when the game loop executes, which is what this is. This is our game loop. This is where all our gaming stuff is happening. This is where all of our movement is, and if we had enemies, this might be where combat is. Now, if you notice, now it's a bit more reasonable. Now we've kind of got this thing going here where I can tap down and he's moving pretty frequently. That's because our wait is only 1/4 of a second. Now what I like to do is something maybe like this, and we can see how this works. And that feels pretty natural to me. A 20th of a second feels real natural. And you can see that we actually have a pretty clean movement. We even got diagonal movement. And one reason we can get that is because both of these can be true at the same time. So key lift arrow press, change X by -10. And then up arrow, change Y by 10. And what's happening is it runs through these if statements. It checks them so quickly that our eyes don't actually notice. But technically, if I hold left and up, he's actually moving -10, then he's changing his Y by 10. It's not actually happening at the same time. There's a slight delay, and that kind of stuff it is important to know that. Because in my experience, you will find that a lot of bugs when it comes to movement are mostly due to you assuming that a lot of stuff happens at the same time. But this stuff doesn't always happen at the same time. It actually happens sequentially. So we have our onStart, we have our forever, and then we have each loop that is being checked. You can actually honestly add quite a small wait, and you'll get some pretty good movement. You can kind of get some fast movements there. So 0.02 is pretty nice. What about 0.1? That's pretty good. Like, that's a nice fast movement. That feels good to play. Now, the next thing you would want to do if you were going to make this into a proper game is to have the left and right arrows do animations and to have them make the character face another way. Now, the next episode of this, so episode 3, will be where we actually do that. We're going to go into the animation. We're going to go into the rotation stuff, and we're going to learn how to actually change the looks of our character, the animation of our character, and how to make this look a bit more natural. Because right now he's just sliding around. That's not very nice, but next episode we will learn how to do that. And I hope to see you there, and I thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe. Thank you very much. Have a good day.